Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today's video is brought to you by Computing Forever because Undoomed is not available right now, so you're stuck with me, I'm afraid. Again, we're talking about feminism here, but I'm going to give it to you from an Irish perspective. Ireland is becoming a liberal basket case, let's call it. The media and political establishment are biased and super lefty and liberal, and academia is littered with gender studies courses, cultural Marxist professors, safe spaces, slut walks, trigger warnings, and other SJW crap. You name it, we've got it. But we don't have a Nigel Farage or a Milo Yiannopoulos to counter the leftist propaganda we're force-fed every day. And to make matters worse, the populace at large also seems to be infected with regressive ideas. I meet a lot of hardcore liberals over here. Traditional conservatism is simply dead in this country, no other word for it. RTE Television, Radio Televisión, is our national broadcaster here, and they're super anti-Trump and pro-feminism, okay? They regularly air SJW-type programming and even showed a documentary recently about rape culture in Ireland. Oh yeah, all the same myths that myself, Undoomed, and others in this community have debunked a billion times, from the wage gap to patriarchy. It's all believed over here. Now, I'm going to show you a clip from a recent interview on RT Television's main chat show, The Late Late Show. And before I do that, I'd better explain to you why this guy has a plastic bag on his face. So this guy is one part of a comedy duo by the name of the Rubber Bandits, and they're pretty funny guys who make parody music videos and sketches, and this guy goes by the name of Blind Boy Boat Club. So he's a very smart guy, actually, who makes a lot of sense, usually, but not today. As it turns out, even his comedy cannot withstand the eroding effects of third-wave intersectional feminism.
Now, because unfortunately RTE don't understand what copyright fair use is, they automatically block anybody who uses even a few seconds of their content on YouTube with a content ID match worldwide. So what I'm going to do instead is read to you the quote from Blind Boy Boat Club. You can, of course, watch the full interview clip that I'm referencing by checking out the original source video in the link below in the description box. A lot of the mental health issues that are happening with young men. I personally think what these young men need is feminism, because when I'm down in Limerick speaking to lads that I know that are suffering from mental health issues, when I actually speak to them and get to the core of what's bothering you, man, what they always say to me is, I have nothing to offer a woman. I have nothing. How am I supposed to provide for a woman? The fact of the matter is, that is a patriarchal attitude that is no longer relevant to us in the 21st century. Neoliberalism has made it in such a way that if you are to go out and buy a house and have a living with a woman, you must be equal. It's as simple as that.
So first of all, he says young men with mental health problems need feminism. Now, in this country, I'm yet to see anyone in the mainstream media or the alternative media criticize him for any of this. Seriously, I think I'm the only one. And of course, RTE, despite being a public broadcaster funded by a, as far as I'm concerned, morally unjustifiable TV license fee that we have to pay, they don't allow comments on their videos for some reason. I wonder why. Well, you couldn't expose people to facts and opposing ideas now, could you?
So if young men are carrying around this faulty view that they have to provide for a woman, forget about it. It can't happen. So I would say to any young men out there, feminism is not about females being powerful. It's about readdressing a balance, and it's about equality. And feminism is a very necessary thing for young men to have. And if you think you're a feminist, let a woman pay for your dinner and see how you feel about that. If you're cool with that, you're a feminist. If you're not, you need to look at yourself, and it's going to come back and bite you in the hole in the end.
And they all applaud. Of course they do. I swear to you. This channel, actually, this very show, had Katie Hopkins on a few weeks ago, and she's kind of like a female Milo. And she received a very icy reception from not only the host, Ryan Tubridy, but also the audience, because she was supporting Trump. They even got complaint letters for having her on. It's as if Ireland received a Christmas present a few years back, filled with liberalism in drug form. We're still in the honeymoon high phase and haven't come down yet. Political correctness and social justice is still a novelty high for many young people, and that's why it's going unchallenged. It's still considered cool to be progressive here. We're about 3 to 4 years behind the UK, Canada, Australia, and the US in terms of reaching that critical mass of liberalism that you guys have reached. And I think it's going to take some time before we finally realize that it's not good for us. Now, as for what Blind Boy has said here, I actually do think his heart is in the right place. It is commendable for him to bring up the mental health issues men are facing. Now, this is something that MRAs struggle to get across into the mainstream, so I think it's somewhat commendable he brought it up. The irony is, however, that the very prognosis he makes that men should embrace feminism, well, it is in fact one of the primary contributing factors to men's mental health issues and high suicide rate. Feminism has destroyed the gender dynamics, obliterated the family, and made men surplus to requirements. What he fails to realize here is that men aren't specifically claiming that they have nothing to offer women in terms of support. They are simply not necessary in terms of supporting a family when the welfare state is capable of supporting women. In fact, if a woman wants to have a child, she can even go it alone without the use of a man. She just needs to go to a sperm bank, for example. Furthermore, divorce courts and child custody settlements overwhelmingly favor women in most instances, which pushes men to the margins, and you guys already know this. And of course, it denies the child a stable upbringing and the role model of a father. Add to this the constant and unending criticism of men and shaming of masculinity as being toxic by the feminist media in advertising, TV shows, misandry in films, comic books, the sexism of affirmative action, a listen and believe false rape culture that destroys innocent men's lives, the feminization of men, and the constant pedestalizing and even masculinizing of women in our society. And you've got a recipe for the creation of a second-class gender status. Men are very much despised in the West right now. This has, of course, been proven to have a major negative effect in the life of the next generation, with an overwhelming number of kids being raised in single-parent, mother-only families, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But before I get into the ways in which feminism has contributed to further the issues surrounding men's mental health, it's important to say that Blind Boy really doesn't understand the ways in which feminism is not about equality. It seems obsessed with perpetuating the false narrative that we live in a rape culture, which has been disproven a billion times already. I can provide citations if he needs to see that.
This is not a secret that about 10% of rapes are reported.
So how do you know 10% of rapes are reported if the others aren't?
Because those people call the women's centers, they ask for help, they seek medical attention.
So they are reported.
That the wage gap has something to do with patriarchy and institutional sexism and not basic sexual dimorphism between men and women. Embracing an ideology that hates you, wishes to shame you for spreading your legs on a train or a bus, prosecute you for mansplaining, lecturing men on their so-called privilege for being men when they lack affirmative action and get much longer prison sentences, have less academic and workplace opportunities, and are more likely to be the victims of violent crimes, well, it's not exactly helpful, let's face it. Demonizing men with the notion that they need to be taught not to rape is just about the most offensive thing I can think of. Is it any wonder gender dynamics are so bad right now? Feminism is simply Marxism in a skirt that promotes social engineering and a planned society, collectivist ideals, and equality of outcome as opposed to equality of opportunity. Feminism takes advantage of men's natural inclination towards chivalry. It tells men that chivalry is benevolent sexism and women don't need men's help. It's all about equality, don't you know, blah, 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 but then promotes campaigns like He for She, making women out to be helpless victims and then demanding men pay women attention and help them overcome invisible, mythical challenges concocted by feminists. As an excerpt from a recent video with Stefan Molyneux and Milo Yiannopoulos sums up brilliantly why men and women should stay the hell away from feminism.
I sort of feel the end result has been that women have almost been weaponized against men. That men now look at women as extremely dangerous because you don't know. You might have an encounter. The next day she runs into a feminist friend who convinces her, and then you're in a situation with no lawyers and no defense and no burden of proof and no presumption of innocence. And then this weaponizing of women against men. Where the hell do people think this is going to end?
Well, it ends actually. And some men don't like it when I say this, but it ends with women suffering even more than men do. We're tough, basically. We won't be happy, but we won't be, abjectly miserable. On the whole, now that's, there is a male suicide epidemic nobody else wants to talk about and all the rest of it. And some men obviously are very, very vulnerable and very miserable as a result of some of this stuff. And I don't want to downplay that at all. But on the whole, men are pretty resilient, pretty tough. They can retreat. And I wrote this big feature that everybody read, a year and a half ago, the Sexodus. People sort of retreating into porn and video games and stuff like that. And by and large, that's the male response to this kind of schism between the genders, fueled by feminism. Women, on the other hand, do not deal well with being alone in their 30s. They're not happy. And you will know from reading the same things things that I do, that, you know, women have been getting progressively more miserable for 50 years or more. You know, every 10 years they report themselves getting miserable at the same time as on paper they're getting more equal. Well, there are only two explanations here. Either women are being lied to and fed, you know, conspiracy theories and being told that they're not as equal as they are, or they're just ungrateful bitches and men should stop trying because they're not going to be happy no matter what you do. You know, so I'm joking, of course, but I understand that going through a man's head, being like, you know, you can ruin my reputation with these ridiculous rape claims, this listen and believe culture. More women are now going to college, more women are graduating, 2-to-1 advantage, you know, going for STEM, blah, 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 blah. All the ways in which you and I know that the pendulum has swung toward, you know, toward women. And you're still not happy. What do I do? You know?
Finally, I will leave you with an excerpt from a video I made some time back about the feminization of mental health. This will specifically address Blind Boy's remarks concerning men's depression rates and the reasons why feminism is only further contributing to the problem. According to the CDC, 80% of suicides are male. Of course, feminists tell us that feminism is all about equality, while never taking men's issues seriously, often balking at the very term men's issues, and stating that the disproportionately high rate of male suicide is an example of how patriarchy hurts men too. They claim it's because in today's society, men are encouraged to be tough and macho and never show their feelings. They effectively victim blame by saying men should man up by ironically behaving more feminine and displaying more emotionally sensitive qualities, another kick in the nuts to masculinity. The truth is, men don't want to resolve their problems in the way women do. They have their own way of going about overcoming their challenges, but sadly our society is not encouraging male-centric solutions to men's problems. In truth, feminism doesn't have the answer to the high rate of male suicide, because feminism is in fact the cause of it. This is because, like any form of Marxist social justice movement that infiltrates anything from atheism to humanism now, feminism has also assimilated mental health care. In much the same way that primary and secondary level education now champions girls as the academic gold standard and treats boys as defective girls, psychology and psychotherapy have adopted a method of operating that is biased towards the female mind. As a consequence, men are failing to receive a form of mental health care that is tailored to meet their specific needs. In Stephen A. Diamond's article on Psychology Today, titled End of Men, the Feminization of Psychotherapy, he discusses how psychiatric practices have changed over the last few decades, and the operational model favors a more emotional feminine approach. This, in turn, has attracted more female practitioners to the industry, so that male therapists have become a minority. Sounds like the same story in education. He talks about the highly rational treatment of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which I've personally had, as being a good example of a therapy that favors masculine traits of reason, logic, and critical thinking over emotion. He compares this to how the industry has now adopted a more lopsidedly feminine, nurturing, soft, passive, supportive approach to treatment in which firm limits, boundaries, diagnosis, structure, and confrontation are sorely lacking. Balance between masculine and feminine, between a focus on both feeling and thinking, intellect and experience, rational and irrational, is essential in psychotherapy, whatever the clinician's gender. He goes on to consider, can a female therapist relate adequately to that which is archetypally and instinctually masculine, to the innate, primitive, often intimidating aggression, anger, or rage of men, to the unique nature and primal power of male sexuality? Much of that depends, in my estimation, on how conscious and related she is to what Jung called her animus, or inner masculinity, and on her own personal experiences with men. For male psychotherapists treating female patients, the same may be said regarding the awareness of an attitude toward their anima, or inner femininity. It's totally understandable that a woman would seek the services of a female therapist to discuss her issues, because she may feel uncomfortable doing so with a male one. Men are no different, except there's a lot less male therapists for them to consult, so they're forced to conform to a one-size-fits-all feminine solution. Diamond goes on to state that due to profound psychobiological differences in men and women, men will seek male mentors and role models just as women will seek female mentors and role models. However, there are plenty of instances in which women can benefit from the treatment of a male therapist and vice versa. The problem is that the industry is now so polarized in one direction, a balance has become almost impossible to achieve. As this excerpt from The Psychologist explains, it seems, however, that gender specific has become synonymous with addressing women's issues, largely because historically it has been women who are more disenfranchised. This policy has proved powerful in ensuring services are reorganized to meet the needs of women, but there has been no parallel strategy for men. The way that men and women articulate and express mental and emotional distress is different. In particular, men are more likely to externalize their feelings, whereas women are more likely to present with anxiety or depression. Data shows that men are more likely to turn to substance abuse, aggressive behavior, violence, and suicide. Though feminists would have us believe that we're all born blank slates and male and female identities are simply learned behaviors, we know this is bullshit. Women tend to work through their issues emotionally, while men seek to tackle their problems like challenges to be analyzed, figured out, and overcome. For societies to remain strong and stable, they need adequate depictions and representations of strong and stable role models for the genders to aspire to. The feminization of healthcare and education are microcosms of our hyper-gynocentric Western world in general. The more masculinity is downplayed or worse, demonized in politics, the workplace, the media, or academia, the more it perpetuates a vicious cycle of male absence. Just look at the statistics of men raised by fatherless homes. Without a strong male role model, you get such shocking situations as 63% of youth suicides coming from fatherless homes, 71% of all high school dropouts coming from fatherless homes, 80% of all rapists with anger problems coming from fatherless homes, and 85% of all youths in prison coming from fatherless homes. So if men suffering from mental health issues are put off by the feminized approach to psychiatric care, and they know that there's no real solution for them there, is it any wonder that the suicide rate is as high as it is? So that concludes this video, guys. A massive thanks to Undoomed for having me. Make sure that you subscribe to his channel, and my channel, if you'd like to subscribe to it, is linked below in the description. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.